Down is off and up is on.
Yeah, so right
Okay.
now it's off once we run.
Okay.
Anastasia.
Yeah, that's just
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Great.
Really.
And I'll be just a little later, and I'll give you. And then if you just be like, acknowledge me, you can be like, I have 5 minutes left. Whatever you want.
Okay.
Okay. We can start.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So we just start.
I don't know. Seems like it.
Okay. Hi everyone. Hi. Um, well, first of all, welcome to closing night concert. It's been a pretty awesome week, at least for me, because I was helping out a little bit with Blend as well. But for those of you who have been here the whole week, you might have already seen all three of us separately on stage at different times. But we are very excited to collaborate for the first time ever on this very colorful program tonight. And I guess we're just going to do some short introductions and then chat a little bit with you about the program tonight. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I am Anastasia. I am a keyboardist. I will be playing these two pretty looking instruments on stage tonight. This is Makobi. He is our wonderful, wonderful, fabulous tenor. And Karen, who is our rock star violinist tonight.
Thank you.
So our concert tonight spotlights two Black British musicians who came from very different worlds, but their lives are they covered a period of about 130 years continuously, because Ignatius Sancho was circa 1729 to 1780, and George Bridgetower was 1770 something to 1860. So it was very cool for me to put this program together and trace the evolution of musical style and musical instruments through the classical and the early Romantic period through the lenses of these two men. And first of all, Ignatius Sancho was, by all accounts, completely self-taught in music, in reading and writing. And Makobi, do you want to tell us a little bit more about Sancho and some of the songs that you will be singing tonight?
Okay, thank you. Just coming into the songs of Sancho and reading about him a little bit, and him being born in a slave ship, like in the Middle Passage, which was, it was like very powerful just to think what was going on with his family, because some scholars do say that he was the slaves that got around Guinea. That's where they were. So his mom died due to disease, and then his dad committed suicide because he could not, live with being a slave. So we see all this kind of being the introduction of his life, then being sold in Colombia, and then bought by sisters in England. So he had to travel again, and he was, I think, 2 years old at that time. So then after he was there for a while, he ran away, I understand, from the sisters, and was taken in by a Duke of Montago, I think, yeah. And that's when they did discover that he was very talented in reading and music and in writing. And for me, that makes me think of a griot, these are storytellers in West Africa who are born in a family, and they tell stories through oral tradition, and they're very talented musicians. So through him, I feel you get this story of slavery just through his life, and then him being such a talented performer is just amazing. So anyway, so when he was taken by this duke, that's when he continued just studying, and then the Duchess at some point was really impressed by him, and when she died, she gave him close to, I think, 100 euros or pounds, and which is equivalent to about, I think I checked, $30,000 now in the US. And he spent most of this money even just in theater, and that's how he met. He went to watch a Shakespeare play, and one of the poets that whose song he set, David Garrick. Mm-hmm. So he met him in one of the performances because Derek was also performing, and they formed a relationship. Then afterwards, he had a speech impediment, so he could not really continue pursuing a career in theater. So he went back to being employed by another family who were also a royal family. And at that time, that's when he composed for one of the songs we're singing today. He dedicated to the Duchess, one of the ladies of the family. So that's just a little bit. And you had mentioned about just the style, he being kind of early classical, like you can just feel it in the music. It's just short, beautiful melodies, and it's just amazing exploring his music.
Thank you. Well, does it feel different singing these songs with these early instruments compared to, say, a modern piano?
Yes, definitely it does. I remember when we were rehearsing, and Anastasia asked, "Hey, do you have perfect pitch?" I said, "No." She said, "Good," because the harpsichord being tuned at 420.
415?
415, and then also the fortepiano.
At 430.
Yes, so I was like, oh no, I'm good. So it was just great just working and just listening to the different timbres of the instruments. It was just amazing performing with them and practicing with you.
Yeah, so to lead a little bit with that, this period of Western classical music is very transitional. So both the harpsichord and the fortepiano coexisted for most of the 18th century. And so there was no standardized like A equals 440 concert pitch. So it could be anywhere from like 392 to even 465. So it's really just, they just used whatever they had, and the instruments just tuned to that, especially the string instruments. And this is also, you could also hear that in the style of Sancho's music, because it sounds kind of halfway between the Baroque period of like very lean textures, simple, well, not simple, but like straightforward harmonic accompaniment plus melody, and the classical style of symmetry and just beautiful singing melodies above a very simple bass line that sometimes even still had figured bass written in, even though the composers rarely specified specifically for harpsichord or fortepiano. So most times the score will say for harpsichord or fortepiano, and it's whatever you have on hand, you can use it. Yeah. And okay, so in complete contrast to Sancho, George Bridgetower seemed to have led a pretty comfortable life. Would you say so?
Yeah, probably.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about Bridgetower?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about Bridgetower. So Bridgetower was a violinist and a composer, as we will hear. I will keep it kind of brief. He was mixed race. And back then they called it Mulatto. And the piece that we're playing at the very end of the program, which will be very different from the Sancho that you're hearing early in the program, it was originally dedicated to him. I'm sure you have read about this in the program notes, but I'll just give a little brief synopsis for those of you who haven't. Bridgetower and Beethoven were very, very good friends, it seems. By all accounts, they were very good friends for a time. Bridgetower was a fantastic violinist, and Beethoven was really taken with him and wrote this sonata for him, and they performed it without any rehearsal early, I think at like 8 a.m.
At 8 a.m.
in the morning, which is insane. When you hear it, you'll hear how crazy that is, because when we had our rehearsals at 10 a.m., I was like, this is too early to be playing this piece. But clearly Bridgetower was an incredible violinist, and I think the dedication refers to him as a madman. And you'll see why. He had a very different, comfortable life compared to Sancho, and he earned his degree in music and taught and had a wonderful life, and yeah. I can also talk a little bit about, like, just piggybacking off of that stylistically. So I'm playing on my quote-unquote Baroque fiddle. It's technically from 1760, so it's a little bit past the Baroque era. It's perfect for this piece. Everybody knows the difference between a modern fiddle and a Baroque fiddle? No? Okay, so I will talk a little bit about that. The main difference, really, that I think that you're going to hear is the strings. So modern violins use metal strings or synthetic strings, and it has a very bright sound, and it's meant to project in really big halls like Carnegie Hall and other venues that really didn't come around until much later. So the earlier violins, the original instruments for a lot of this music that we'll be playing, they used gut strings, which are made from sheep gut. And it has it can be sheep, it can be beef. I'm playing on sheep gut. It has a much warmer sound. It's much more organic to me. I prefer it. It's a little bit gentler, and it does not project as well, so I encourage you guys to sit a bit closer to the front. But the violin I'm using is from 1760, which is a little bit later, and it has a higher fingerboard because as the repertoire advanced, we started playing in what we call higher positions. So you're going to hear a lot higher notes than you will from the era of Sancho, even though that's already starting to push beyond strictly Baroque performance. But the violin that's the main difference that you're going to hear with the violin. And then also you might notice that the bow looks a little bit different than a modern bow. A Baroque bow they vary in length. They can be very short to maybe about this long. Sorry, my mic. And then the bow that I'm using is a copy from around 1800, and it looks a lot like a modern bow, but it's actually quite a bit lighter. And it's perfect for this piece that we'll be playing at the end of the program.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to ask any questions?
We have about 4 minutes.
Is the bow strung a different way, or is it the same?
No, it's the same horse hair. It's the same hair, but the main difference is the length and the weight. And if you really get into it, some of the mechanisms we use to tighten the hair, that varied over time. The bow that I'm using, really, it didn't change that much after about 1800. The violin bow didn't change that much. But some of the much earlier bows, they didn't have like a screw mechanism to tighten the bow, and so if it was really humid and they needed to change the tension of the bow hair, they would like stick a piece of leather in there or various things to change the tension of the bow. Yeah.
Were these pieces part of your repertoire before this festival?
So the Kreutzer Sonata, or Kreutzer Bridgetower Sonata, as we are trying to call it now. I didn't finish telling that story. Let me finish telling that story. So the reason that it's referred to as the Kreutzer Sonata, and I grew up calling it the Kreutzer Sonata, was because it was, well, when I was learning it, it was taught to me as this was dedicated to the wonderful violinist Rudolf Kreutzer. And apparently, so Beethoven and Bridgetower were really great friends, and Beethoven was really taken with him, and then they got in a fight about a girl. So he took off the dedication, which is, very humanizing, I think. And your question was?
If these pieces tonight had been in your repertoire.
Right. So for me, that sonata, I grew up listening to it. I felt it was probably one of my first loves. So I know it very well, and I have played through it on modern violin, but this will be my first performance of it. And I have to say, I come to it with a very different mindset as a historical performer than I did as a modern violinist. And it's been really wonderful working with Anastasia and we've never played together or met before. So this was a really cool piece to get to know each other musically and just as people.
And then you're also going to hear us improvising quite a bit of stuff tonight as part of the, performance practice. But it's just fun. There is a lot of freedom to do things differently, especially the second time round. So we've tried to do some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in the second movement of the Beethoven, I'm taking some liberties that I don't know if he would have been okay with, but he's not here, so. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
Well, we should go get ready to play for you guys.
Yep, and we will see you in just a bit.
Thank you.
One fall.